In this video, we are going to take a look at different types of angle relationships. So the first thing we're going to look at is the angle addition postulate. So as you can see, we're given two angles, this angle right there and this one right there. And then it tells us that QST, which is this whole angle right there, is 135. So for this problem, we can use the angle addition postulate, which tells us that if we add the two pieces together, it's equal to the whole thing. So we just set up a little equation, 3x plus 1 plus 2x minus 6 equals 135. So before we start solving anything, we want to gather up the like terms. So notice there's an x and x here, so that becomes 5x minus 5 equals 135. So now solve for x, so add 5 to both sides. So we get 5x equals 140 and divide by 5. So we're going to get x equals 28. So they tell us they want us to find measure of angle QSR, which is this angle right here. So we're going to have to plug in the x that we just found into this angle. So 3 times 28 plus 1, that equals 85. And that's our angle, 85 degrees. The next type of angle relationship that we have to look at is the angle bisector. Okay, so when we have any kind of bisector, that means it's going to cut something into two equal halves. In this case, an angle. So we know that this angle right there and this angle right there, they're congruent to each other. So because they're congruent, their measures are equal, so we can set the pieces equal to each other. So 5x minus 11 equals 4x plus 1. So whenever you see the word bisector, you're going to get two equal halves, and you should automatically think set them equal to each other. So let's solve. So let's subtract 4x from both sides. Add 11 to both sides. So x equals 12, and we want to find the measure of ABC. So that's this full angle. So if we plug in the 12 into one of the two expressions, so let's plug in this one and double it, then we get that whole big angle. So we have 4 times 12 plus 1, and then we're going to double all of this because we want the full angle. So we're going to get 2 times 49, which is equal to 98. Okay, so that completes this problem. The next type of relationship that we have are linear pair and vertical angles. So in this problem, we want to find the value of x and y, and we're going to use both kinds of relationships. So if you have vertical angles in a linear pair, so what do we do for that? Linear pair. A linear pair are two angles that are adjacent to each other, and they add up to 180. Okay, so if we have a linear pair, we're just going to add the two angles and set them equal to 180. Now in this case, we see this angle right there has an x, and also this angle next to it has an x. So they're adjacent angles, they form a linear pair. So we want to set add them up and set them equal to 180. Okay, so we solve. So combine like terms. So subtract 75 from both sides. And divide by 21. So that gives us x equals 5. Okay, so that has only given us x. Now to find y, we need to do a little something before we get there. So I'm going to need one of the angles. And what I'm going to use for this part is the vertical angle relationship. So vertical angles are two angles that are kind of opposite each other, like the 3y and the 15x plus 75. So if they're in this position, vertical angles, so then we know that those two angles are congruent. So they're congruent, so we can set those two equal to each other. Now, in order to do that, we do need to know what this angle is right there. So we're going to take what we found for x and plug it in. So 15 times 5 plus 75. Plug that in your calculator. That gives you 150. Okay, so we know that this angle is 150. And if that's true, then we know that this angle is also 150. So if that angle is 150, then we know that 3y equals 150. So divide both sides by 3, so we get y equals 50. Okay, so we have used the fact that they're vertical angles to set up a little equation. Okay, so the next relationship is complementary and supplementary angles. Now, the procedure here is almost the same, except we have to remember that complementary angles are angles that sum to 90 degrees, and supplementary angles, they sum to 180 degrees. So that's really the only difference between the steps, is that you set them equal to something different. So the first of the two problems says angle A and B are complementary angles. Find measure of angle A and measure of angle B. So because we know that they sum up to 90 degrees, we can just add them up and set them equal to 90. So the first thing I'm going to do is simplify the left side. So we have 4x and x gives me 5x plus, we have 34 and 36 gives me 70 equals 90. So subtract 70 from both sides. That gives me 20 over here. So x equals 4. Okay, so now that I know that x equals 4, I'm going to have to plug it in into each one of the expressions because I want to find the actual measure of the angles. So measure of angle A equals 4 times 4 plus 34. So that's equal to 50 degrees. And the second angle, measure of angle B, that's 4 plus 36. And that's equal to 40. And notice that both of these angles add up to 90, which they should, otherwise we have a problem. Okay, so now the second part, supplementary angles. Now, again, the procedure is the same. The only difference is that those angles add up to 180. So we're going to set up our equation, x plus 50 plus x plus 100 equals 180. So gather like terms. So we have 2x plus 150 equals 180. So subtract 150 from both sides. So we have x equals 15. So again, we have to go and plug that in into each one of the angles. So here, measure of angle A equals 15 plus 50. So that's 65. And measure of angle B equals 15 plus 100. So that's 115. Okay, so those are the two angles that are supplementary to each other. So that concludes the angle relationships you need to know for the test.